Hi everybody, I'm Suzanne, and today's video is going to be a bit of a review. I was approached by a company that makes brushes, paint brushes, and it's called Golden Maple. And so basically they sent me a brush set, and it's a pretty nifty little brush set. Now, those who know, I generally use uh, almost always use rosemary brushes. That's my brush of choice. But I'll throw a couple different ones here and there. I like some Princeton brushes I have that I enjoy and use all the time. This is a different set. It's a brand unfamiliar to me. And it is you can purchase it on um, Amazon. So they're short handles. I always use long handles, but this is how the set came. It's a short handle, short handle brushes. They do have a little wooden maple uh, handle. These are synthetics. They're kind of soft, but they still got a little bounce to them. We're going to give them a try. We're going to try out this set, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And I will leave the link to this set in the description, and you can decide for yourself. I'm going to go ahead and do a painting. You can watch it and follow along. And the painting I'm going to do, and I've got two that I just kind of sketched out a little something on wood. So I'll be working on wood, cradled wood panels that have been primed with acrylic paint. And we're going to do an oil painting, and we're going to use this set and see how it goes. So let's see what Golden Maple's got. And in the meantime, we're going to do the paintings we're going to do are of little sparrows. They're just small pieces, 6 by 6. And since these are short handles, I kind of wanted to do a smaller painting because then I don't have to worry about getting off of it. It's so little that I can't stretch my hand that far out. So we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what these golden maples can do. So I am going to take this palette knife, and of course this palette knife came with the set, and I'm going to basically block in the background with this palette knife. The color I used is Celadon, oh no, is it Celadon Green? I think it's Celadon Green by Charvine, excuse me, Titanium White and Raw Umber. And believe it or not, you can't tell here, but I had a little bit of Cerulean by Winsor Newton and basically just blended this color. So I'm going to be blocking in the substrate, the actual substrate here in a minute. And I'm going to show you the other palette. The other palette is actually for the birds that I'm going to be painting. They're just like little house finches or sparrows. So I have Ivory Black, Winsor Newton, Payne's Gray, Winsor Newton. This is Purple Lake, Winsor Newton. Dioxazine Purple, Winsor Newton. Amethyst Parm by Charvine. Ultramarine Blue by Winsor Newton. That is Cadmium Green by Blue Ridge. Titanium White by Winsor Newton. Raw Umber, Winsor Newton. Yellow Ochre, Winsor Newton. Raw Sienna by Michael Harding. That's Burnt Umber by Michael Harding. And Burnt Sienna by Winsor Newton. So I may be adding some more. Actually, one of my birds is very cool in temperature, and one of my birds is a lot warmer. So these are all bird colors, except this will be some of the foliage that will be in one of the pieces as well. So let's see what happens. Okay, so folks, here is what we're going to be practicing on or trying out these new brushes. These are cradled wooden panels that I've done in acrylic, just basically primed with an acrylic paint, and we're just going to do some little sparrows. I'm going to attempt some stuff. I wanted to do these basically at the same time because I have some frames in mind for them that are neat little floater frames that I have like boxes of. So I'm wanting to go ahead and sell these kind of as a pair, and that's kind of my intent. So I'm gonna use the little palette knife that came with this set, and I'm just gonna kind of, I don't know, let's see what happens here. I just want to put some of the paint on here, and I may have to do this differently. And I don't know if I like that color yet. I didn't know how it's going to look on here with, and I don't know if I'm going to just try this brush. So this is one of it's their #1 flats, I guess. And I am just trying to go in around this bird. I'm not wanting it to be, I want to keep this piece as painterly. So I did a basic sketch of the bird ahead of time, and I'm just kind of popping that in there. I want to keep this paint thin. I think I'm going to be okay with the color. And I showed you how I mixed it earlier. And I'm just kind of popping it in here. The only medium I'm using is a little bit of oil. I want to kind of leave some of the this red showing. I'm just kind of playing with it. And I'm wanting to keep it kind of rough. So I'm just kind of pop, pop, pop. And so the brushes are quite maneuverable, if that's a word I can use to describe. So I'm just kind of playing with it. I may just leave it at that. And I'm going to do the same on this one. I'm dipping this brush. These brushes are very soft. Now, depending on what kind of substrate you're used to painting on, being that this is wood, I'm not getting the bounce of a canvas, right? So these might be a little bit soft for painting on wood, but I usually prefer a softer brush anyway, so that's usually not a problem for me. Oh yeah, I've already covered up my. That's okay. We'll add them in when we need to. I'm just popping a little bit of oil on here. Like the red shining through, and I actually just used a mixture of burnt sienna and white and titanium white. I'm trying to think what other the color, to get this background color. I just wanted to leave it like this, because these are going to go in floaters, so some of that's going to be visible, and we're just going to have, and I'll just kind of. I like it to be a little bit rough, if that makes sense. Okay, so I was probably premature in doing that, but I just wanted to try this little brush out. I'm just going to use a little paint thinner and kind of knock that down a little bit. See how these wash
brush up. So one of the things I won't be able to talk about, because I don't know how well these brushes hold up. They may hold up great. We'll see, you know. So I'm gonna go back to the bird palette, if you will. So I'm going to go in with the number 10 golden maple filbert that they have, and this bird is very cool in temperature. So I'm starting with a gray that I made with the amethyst parm by Charvine, and mixed a little raw umber in it, and this actually is probably too light. So we'll be mixing some other colors to go along in this, and I'm going to be I want it to be, you know, I want it to blend a little bit. I'm going to try to keep this as painterly for me as I can. And I can already say, all right, I may go in with a smaller brush. So there wasn't that many small ones of the filberts. There's a lot of brushes. Yeah, this one's a little bit smaller. And this is a number 8. I'm going to go in with the darker color down underneath on the under part of this bird. And oftentimes when I do a sketch, it's just a rough kind of idea of where things are going. It may not be written in stone, so to speak. I'm going to try to keep it moving in that direction that it should go. And I'm going to clean this brush off because it's a little goopy. Goopy, that is an artist term, like that. The brush is very, very soft. Not bad, but it's not what I'm used to for a beginning stage of a painting, because all of these brushes are going to have basically the same consistency. They're all the same type of brush, just different shapes. So, you know, that's okay. But I'm usually, you know, I'm used to being able to vary my weight or my softness of a brush. I am just letting that blend that edge a little bit. So I'm just taking a little ivory black, moving it in, and I'm still using that same, this is the number 8 golden maple. And, you know, at the end of this, I'll give you my final assessment of the brush, if you will. And you can decide for yourself if this is something you want to try. I'm not unhappy with the brush. Let's just say that. So far, you know, it's just different than what I'm used to. It is a little different. Just kind of applying the colors, giving it a base for what I'm going to be putting down here. And I'm going to put a little bit of the brown in here. So I like to blend that edge. And if I need to, I'll change things around a little bit. And I often do that. So I may actually move this stick over a little bit just to give me a little bit more distance. I like negative space. So I'm going to move that stick over, which means I'm going to bring some of the green back in. I'm going to go to the top of this little bird's head. I'm probably bringing it up a little bit. Wash my brush off. I'm just using a little Gamsol to in between colors here to wipe off my brush. And anybody knows me knows I like to wipe my brushes off a lot. So I'm just bringing. So grab it. I will say the brush is not as grabby as I'm used to. But again, I would say so far my assessment is that if you are a beginner painter, this is not a bad set. It's just not what I'm used to is all. And I told the folks I'd give a very honest opinion. And if I'm going on YouTube and telling you about a product, trust me, I'm going to give you my honest assessment on something. I am not going to blow smoke just because they gave me this set for free. It's not a bad brush. I'm going to switch to a pointed round so I can get in tight. So let's see how that edge, how well it keeps that edge. I'm going to kind of suggest where the bill's going to go here. It doesn't come out very far from the face. That looks really strange, but so underneath this bird's bill, let's see. So the upper mandible of the bill. I'm curious to see how well it keeps its point. Now, you've heard me talk about the Princeton brush that I adore. That was actually given to me as a gift, and it holds its point really well. Let's see how well this guy does. So we're going to give it some. When I'm starting off a piece, I'm right now in the very, very early beginning stages still. So forgive me if it seems weird, if it doesn't make sense when I'm laying down at first. Just trying to get I will layer a lot of colors on here. Okay, so I'm going to bring out the back a little bit more. A little bit more browns in here. So, of course, the predominant brown that I've been using has been raw umber, because it's kind of a cool neutral. I like to keep my soft edge, y'all. And we're going to pull this out a little bit, which means this stick is coming out. I'm going to be pushing it out a little bit. So the whole bird, if you want to be honest here, has just gotten larger. I had the head a little too small in my initial sketch. So I'm putting a little bit of the darker colors in this area that I can, and I will still use a slightly feathery stroke, if you will. So I'm going to bring that back out a little bit more. So this is more like at this level, it should be there. Then there should be a part of the back that goes this way, and then the back starts. So we're gonna be fixing and moving. I'm gonna put a little bit of raw or burnt umber in here, so it's a warmer brown. And I'm trying to, got that green. And here's where the soft brushes do come in handy. So I'm going to take a smaller, this is a little small clean brush. This is a number 6, what they call a number 6 filbert. And I'm just going to, where I have kind of impasto paint in this area, I'm just going to blend. I want that. I like that soft blend there, y'all. I get all crazy when it comes to soft blend here. I'm going to take a little bit of a grayish brown, a little cool brown. So I'm taking raw umber and some of the initial purples that I made here. And I'm going to say the top of this tail is going to come like that. And I may actually use a paint scraper to kind of suggest where that's going. Like that. Let's try to put that back in. Paint scrapers are awesome. Okay, let's see where I'm at. Sometimes you just kind of have to assess. So I'm going to go back with my original green here that I made. And luckily, I have quite a large volume of it made up. So I'm going to take some of this and get some of these shapes a little bit broader. This negative shapes here. To have that negative space. So, oops, I got a little bit of that not so good color right there. And I'm just kind of pulling that down a little bit, knocking it down, because I want that green over here. I really want some space here between bird and my whatever branch or whatever this bird is. I want some space. Okay. So, that's good. Remember our little brush we started with? So, I'm just gonna kind of hit that a little bit. We have it very thick there. I'm trying to knock that down a little bit. And it's okay. So I'm going to stay with this little brush that I'm with right here. And that would be Singer barking at a little tiny lady out there walking. Sparrow, really, honey? I don't think that's necessary. Stop. So it helps to use very little short strokes to create that feathery look. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. And I want that soft. Singer, stop, honey. I think she's pretty little. That lady's no big threat here, folks. And I like that soft blend, and I'm going to kind of capitalize on that, even if it seems kind of weird at first. I'm going to enjoy that a little bit. And I know there's going to be some layering in of. Not going to sweat it right now. So I'm just kind of looking. I'm going to clean my brush off real well. And I'm just going to kind of pull some of this color up into this area. I've got quite a bit of color on here. And just putting a little bit of what we're suggesting, little bits. I want this to be a little bit more painterly than what you're used to seeing from me. I'm just kind of playing with these brushes, and I have envisioned something that I'm trying to achieve. So just be patient with me. This probably, I always say these things, probably won't have the detail you're used to seeing from me, but then I always chicken out and do what I know, which is put in lots of detail. But so far, I am not dissatisfied. I'm just telling you this up front. Okay, so I'm going to start working, kind of have the basics of this bird in. Let's just kind of knock this down a little bit. And I will say, for a soft brush, I'm trying to keep a light hand. I'm going to keep that soft edge. I'm going to kind of blend that away. I almost want that to be almost like you can't tell where something starts and stops here. I like it that way for this. I'm swapping between this little filbert so I can do some blending, and I keep flopping between the pointed round and this tiny filbert. These are very, very soft brushes. They are all the same material, the synthetic material, which, I have to say, it's got enough spring to it to be able to, carry the weight of a heavier paint. And are nice and soft enough to go ahead and do a good blend. I am working on a harder surface. So with a harder surface, you get a lot less, how do I describe it? Spring back, because it doesn't bounce as much. But these brushes are performing quite nicely. Now, since they are all the same fiber, it's not like I can flip-flop between a harder brush or a softer brush, because I'm determined to just give this brush set an actual review. So, it would be nice if they had sets that were actually a little bit mixed, maybe some coarser, heavier brushes, as well as maybe a synthetic that was more like a sable. But I have to say, overall, I'm enjoying these brushes very much. The handles are very nice too. They're easy grips. The way the brushes are actually constructed, none of them are shedding. I haven't gotten any shed on these paintings. So, and I'm sure most of you have painted with a brush and you keep getting a little bit of hairs showing up on your, Singer's barking in the background, obviously. But you get a little bit of hair come off in your brush. These are not doing that, so that's a good thing. Now, obviously, this bird has a lot of purple in it, and I am flipping back and forth with my warm and cool colors. The chest on this bird has lots of dioxazine purple and titanium white and raw umber, as well as Payne's gray, and it just looks like, I mean, in the photo reference that I'm using, he does have a very purpley chest. And I'm just moving around, enjoying these brushes. Yes, if I haven't said it already, they are working pretty well for me. And I'm just kind of putting in some of the dark values that are going in around the bird's face using that little pointed round. The set came with a variety of brushes, but they're all pretty much for smaller paintings, I would say. And, this is a 6x6, so this is working out very well. And just kind of, I go back and forth on my bird. You'll see that I kind of add some here and take some away and move through it. But meanwhile, I'm just trying to get a little bit of the detail. Still, this bird looks a little chunky. I haven't really blended it so much. Just wanting to see what the brush can do on its own without me manipulating it that much. But it seems to be working. I'm rolling through it. Now I'm going to use their 14 flat, just kind of adding in this this little tree that the bird is perched on, and it works really well. You can see this is the number 14 flat, and just kind of knocking it out here. I wanted to keep it kind of rough. I am wanting to put these particular paintings, and you'll see I'm going to be working on another one in a second, into some floater frames. So I'm using a little cadmium green and creating the moss that was on this stick this bird is perched on, and that's just such a fun color for me. I love that pop, and of course that bright greeny yellowy color of the moss next to that purple of the bird's chest is just, I don't know, it just plays in my brain. I love it. I love playing colors like that against each other, and just kind of creating that little bit of moss on that branch. Those are fun, and you can see this little pointed round is doing the trick. I will leave the link to this set in my description of the video. So if you're interested in giving them a try, I'd recommend them. I would say that these brushes are great for, you know, beginner painter and somebody who wants to paint smaller. These are all short handle brushes, so they're not going to work out if you're doing a larger piece or if you like to stand off your piece to paint because the handles are short. That's probably right now my biggest I don't want to say fault, because I do use short handle brushes, but I prefer long handle brushes. I'll rather choke up on a long handle brush than to paint with short brushes. But that's just a me thing. And but for a smaller, you know, if you're used to painting on a smaller painting or substrate, these are actually pretty nifty little brushes. So I'm kind of cutting in around the bird, creating that leg, and I'm cutting in, I'm actually removing some of the paint with paint scraper to make way for where I'm going to actually place the paint. And again, that little pointed round will end up serving me well, and yeah, so it's popping it in there. I will say, you know, one of the true tests for any brush for me is to see how long it holds up. And since I am basically just doing a demo for you guys so you can see how these brushes perform, I really can't speak on how well they'll hold up, simply because these are virgin brushes, right? And so I don't know how many paintings you can get in with one set, but I will go over a little bit on that towards the middle or end of the video, because I do let a day go between where I actually wash out the brushes to try to see, you know, how do they dry out, how do they perform the second day. So I will have that here in the video, but meanwhile, we're just painting bird feet. You could tell it's late in the afternoon because the sun comes in so bright in the fall into my studio space. So wow, isn't that green? But this is usually the light that I love to work in. It's just it's fun. So yeah, it took on a whole new light, so to speak. But anyway, so I'm using here's one of their smaller filberts, and putting in the underneath of the tail and kind of delineating the tail feathers just a tiny bit. And you're able to, I'm trying to do a little bit more blend where it's going to be a little less chunky perhaps than I currently have. There'll be a little bit more blend, and I'm just still working on the shape. I keep bringing stuff out a little bit more and changing it, but you can tell I'm using the Payne's Gray quite a bit in this bird. Payne's Gray and Dioxazine Purple. The red or brown colors are a burnt umber. Now see, I'm using one of their flats, and you can see the marks it leaves, so I go back and try to blend it a little bit. Now, since I am working on a very hard surface, because this is a wood panel, and these brushes are medium softness. They're not the softest brushes, but they're not the hardest brushes. When I'm working on a hard surface, I generally like to use soft brushes because they leave less marks. And these are somewhere in between. So yeah, I'm going to have a little bit more mark simply because I'm not painting on canvas, I'm painting on wood. And that's kind of an interesting tidbit. If you are a painter that paints a wood panel, you will have to paint with a very light hand if you use these brushes, because you will have brush marks. I think you just paint with a lighter hand, meaning you put less pressure on your brush. And I keep going back and forth, so there's quite a bit of paint on here, and I'm basically doing this bird alla prima, so there's going to be a little bit less layering and more direct paint method of laying down the color. But anyway, I'm getting into this bird's head, and we're getting close on finishing this guy up. So, and I'm using just a little yellow ochre, titanium white to do that little front pole of this bird's head. And he's coming along. So I'm going to use the Creative Mark paint scraper to do my signature, since I'm pretty much wrapping it up on this piece. And for me, this is a very easy way to just to sign a piece. Especially on smaller pieces, I oftentimes adjust my signature to just something very simple like this. And, I'm basically at this point going to just use the small pointed round for the final detail on this piece. And I have used this same pointed round. There was a lot of pointed rounds and brushes that I never even got to use on this piece. I pretty much did this entire piece with about less than 5 brushes. So, yeah, there's more to experiment with in this set. And I'm not going to get to that today because I'm just doing these 2 small 6x6s. But yeah, this little brush has done really well, and I'm, getting ready to start the second bird, so here we go. So, on to the second sparrow. So, I started off with just a very bold, dark stroke on the bird's chest, but you're going to see that this drawing that I did is basically just a suggestion because I do a much larger bird. I just kind of spread it out. I am just looking where parts of this bird are in relationship to other parts of the bird, and that's why it just gets a little bit bigger and bigger. This dark red or brown that I'm putting in is a burnt umber with a little bit of Mars red mixed in. Mars red is an opaque color, so it will hold up good for me. See, it's a little bit stronger, and just kind of popping this in, and I'm working quickly because as you can see, I've got it a little bit time lapse, but this bird goes on much easier for me for some reason. I don't know. I just was having fun with it and just using very broad strokes at first, and no detail yet. I'm still, I'm using one of the, actually it's a filbert that I'm using right now, and just kind of getting in all the shapes. And that's kind of how I approach almost all my pieces. Get the shapes in before you start working on detail. And obviously I changed the whole size of this bird based, so the drawing is different, everything's different. And you'll see I'll end up moving that stick later because it won't make sense to where the bird's feet go. You'll see. I'll be changing that soon. But just getting in my values, getting in my shapes, getting in the, everything, and just flipping around with these brushes. I have to say they're working pretty well. Again, I will leave the link in the description for you. And folks, if you have any questions about anything about this video, and maybe you have another question that you might want to ask about my experience with this brush set, the golden maple brush set. I know they're available. They sent me a link and said they're available all these different places, and you can get this set. I'm going to admit this. I am actually surprised. Everybody who knows me. I am a rosemary girl through and through, and that doesn't mean I've all of a sudden converted over to this particular brush line. But I will say that for what you have to pay to get this set, which is not very much. I want to say the set's less than $30. It's a lot of brushes, and they are working pretty darn well. So yeah, I definitely would recommend this brush set, especially if you're starting out and you're just really, you need something good to work with. And I like to set my students up for success. And if you start off, I'm going to say it, if you start off with crappy brushes, folks, it's just not going to work out for you. I promise it will be more frustrating than anything. And I hate it if somebody stops painting because that's their experience is, they've had bad brushes or bad paints or, bad materials in general, and they didn't get the results they wanted. Well, yeah. So that does happen, and these are good brushes. I would definitely recommend them. All right, so I'm just kind of working through here and getting in my dark values, and you can see I've already moved the beak out, and I know it starts off messy, but you'll see how I eventually come around to the place where it needs to be. I go around the barn sometimes, but yeah, we get there. So you can see this little male house sparrow, I guess, is coming together. He's getting in there. We're getting him in. And using a lot of Payne's Gray and raw umber in these dark areas like this, whereas the other bird that I was doing had a lot more cool colors like the dioxazine purple, purple lake, and Payne's Gray. This bird is a little bit warmer. And so I'm using a little bit right here to highlight the bill. I'm using a color called pale violet. And that just does a nice job. And working it, and using this pointed round. I'm starting to come in now that I've kind of gotten my shapes in. I can go in and start doing more finer work, and by finer work, I'm obviously switching over to the pointed round. And with this one, I'll be wrapping it up pretty soon. I am just working on the detail, and you're going to see I'm going to change the branch once I decide where the legs are going. Otherwise, the branch placement doesn't make sense. But I'm putting in the lighter colors, using that pointed round, and working in the details. And the details, anybody knows me knows it's really hard for me not to do detail. I like it too much. It's just too much fun. So working this little eye, there's that little light eye ring there, and I'll put the shine in that eye. And for me, shine is always what brings the eye to life. And I actually use a very pale blue to make that color. It's not white. But working that eye, you can tell this little pointed round really gets in there nice, keeps its edge pretty well. It does, we're working with the same brushes I worked on the day before. So the first bird I pretty much painted that day. This bird was started the next day. And so the brushes that I'm using now are the ones, that I used the day before, and they held up well. I wash them out really well. I'm scrupulous when it comes to washing brushes. And, I put them back into shape, and they held their shape pretty well, I have to say. These, so they did well. So this is the second day pass on these brushes. And I'm almost going to, you'll see, I'll be wrapping it up before too long. But I'm, getting in here, putting in all the little details and all the fun stuff that makes painting, just for me, so much fun.
All the little details, all the little details. And here in a minute, you're going to see me wipe out that stick because I know that branch, it just isn't going to work. So all the little fluffy side feathers, you know, I can do. And I was like, okay, this stick isn't, got to move that stick. So we're going to go ahead and paint that away and boom, gone. That's Gandhi. So got rid of that stick and here we go. We've got the stick and we're about ready to wrap it up. I'm going to put a little bit of foliage on that stick and boom, we're going to call this sucker done.
So here's my completed pieces of the little sparrows, and I wanted to go ahead and go into depth and do some detail on these pieces to really put these brushes through their paces. I wanted to see what they were capable of. So it's funny, I signed this one by scratching out the paint, and then I used one of their smaller brushes to sign this one with the brush. So I have to say, I think the brushes are quite versatile. They performed as I would have hoped or would have expected from the type of brush that I was using. And I'm not disappointed. Of course, these are smaller pieces, and that's why these brushes work. If this was a larger painting or even much bigger than, I don't know, an 8x10, I might be disappointed simply because the brush set is rather small. They have smaller brushes and they're all short handles, but I'm pleased with what it did for me on these little sparrow pieces. Another test for me when it comes to trying out brushes is how do they hold up. Now, since I only did 2 paintings with these brushes, and of course there's a whole bunch of brushes I didn't even get to try simply because this was a small painting and I wasn't going to get to all. But these were the ones that I used for these sparrows. And so after I wash out a brush, and you have to know this about me, I am meticulous when it comes to washing out brushes. And I use Murphy soap to wash out my brushes, and then after I'm done, I carefully put them into shape. And how long a brush holds its shape is kind of a defining quality for me as to whether I like the brush. Now you can see these kind of frayed out a little bit after they've been put into their shape, but it's still pretty sharp. So not bad, not perfect, but okay. So the pointed round, obviously it has a sharper point. It did better. And know that when I put these together, after I washed them out, they were completely together. So there's a little bit of fray, but not too bad. Now that they're dry and I can kind of move them around, it obviously went together. So that's actually pretty good. And this one held its shape pretty well. So after it had been washed. So yeah, and these had been used and washed, and I actually just finished them up using these brushes. Again, they held their shape pretty well. Can't complain too badly. So yeah, there you go. Here's the rest of the set that I never had an opportunity to use. Now I could have used like this rigger to sign the piece, but I just kind of went with the brushes that you saw that I was using. Again, being that this set is short handle, they're all short handles, and they're relatively small brushes as far as painting is considered. So I would say this is an okay set, especially if you're doing smaller works. So there.
So my overall feeling about this set of golden maple brushes is, they're pretty good little brushes for the price of what the cost of these brushes and what goes into putting them together. Can't complain. I will say, out of if I was to give it a 1 out of 10, 10 being the highest, and one being the lowest. I would probably score these brushes somewhere around 6.5 to 7 is probably what I would say. And the reason I wouldn't give it a 10 is one, for this size of a set, and of course it came, brushes were in the whole, the whole thing was full of brushes. It had a, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. It came with a knife and all the brushes. So you saw the brushes in the beginning of the video, what it came with. Awesome, nice brushes, but only if you're doing small works. These will only be, these paintings that I completed here that you saw me work on were, these are 6x6s. So they're relatively small paintings. And with a relatively small painting, yeah, this brush is awesome. These are a great set of little brushes. I would say where I can't really answer the question on how these brushes hold up. I showed you for me, how well does a brush hold up? Because I use my brushes, or use them hard. Do they clean up well? Do they hold their shape? I showed you what the brushes look like, and they did actually pretty good. There's a little fray, but I was able to touch them, and it kind of made them go together, so they weren't really frayed at the ends. And I would recommend these brushes to somebody who is starting out. You can get, for the price of these brushes, and I'll leave this in my description, the link to these brushes in the description of this video. You get them on Amazon, right? And they're good. They're good brushes. I think these are great for somebody who's starting out, or even if you're not starting out, you just need some brushes they come in this neat little, this neat little container. This little, wraps them up in here, and you've got this little water or oil resistant section here, which you can hold them up and roll them up and put them in your. These would be good for travel if you're doing plein air, but again, they're short handles, and I like long handles, and that's a personal thing for me. So this is 14. This is their 14 brush. This is one of their larger brushes. They did include fan brushes. And in this set, I don't use a lot of fans. That's just me. But if you needed a set of brushes that kind of covers, they have angled brushes in here, flats, pointed rounds, filberts, and fans, hey, and a nice little rigger for shining your pieces. This is a pretty good little set. So would I recommend it to somebody? Yeah, I would. I would recommend it to somebody who is starting out painting and isn't sure they want to commit and want a good brush to start with. If you are folks that attend my workshops, oftentimes I will have you get a set of brushes that I use. I like Creative Marks Pro Stroke red tip brushes. They're synthetics, and I recommend those a lot. And for a long time, that was my workhorse brush. It's something I used a lot. Would I score these kind of up there with red tips? The Creative Mark? Yeah, I would. These are very versatile little brushes. They are synthetic, so they're soft, but yet they got a little spring to them. There's a little bounce to them, so they will be able to hold heavier paints, and yeah, not too bad. So there's my honest review of the maple, golden maple brush set that was given to me. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. And until then, from Kingsport, Tennessee, I'll see ya. Bye.